You're listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM. Presented by McDivitt Law Firm.
I didn't want to be anywhere near you. I am in an undisclosed location.
Are you scared of me? Is it something I said?
That's the odor.
The odor. I smell good. I always put eucalyptus on before I come into work.
You smell like success, Ross. Success.
Hey, thank you very much, sir. How's everything? How are you? How's the family?
Oh, we're doing well. We're doing really well. We're, surviving some bouts of COVID.
You and everybody else, man, since Christmas. We've been spinning plates around here from people who actually got sick with COVID to people who were exposed to people who had COVID, and they, having to do those 5-day timeouts. It's terrible.
Yeah,
I'm done.
I know, but overall, we're doing well, man. We had a good Valentine's Day. My daughter, who is 10, has asked me to be her Valentine.
Oh, how sweet.
So I was thrilled. It was my only Valentine that I got. My son didn't even get me a Valentine. He came home with a Valentine he made at school, and it was just blank. I said, well, you could have put my name on it or something.
Go the extra mile, kid. Well, I'll tell the girl that you're mine. She should back off.
That's right.
More. We'll tell you what. We got phones open. If you got a question for Dave, you need some help, we got you. We also got several emails here today. Anyone now, we were talking a little bit off the air. Any of these slam dunks you don't need to talk to who asked the question? Or is there anything you need more answers to questions for these folks?
I think we can. There was one about the signing something might give up their workers' compensation.
I wondered about that, because it's kind of vague, huh?
It is. The other two, Ross, the other two I think are pretty straightforward.
Okay.
And I think they are actually good topics to get into.
I'll tell you what, we'll track down David then and see if we can get more from him, because his question was simply, if I sign something for my company that sounds like I give up my rights to workers' compensation and other various things, is that legal? So you want to actually hear the verbiage probably, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do that. I'm going to take you first, though, man. As we were talking today, Virgin Galactic has announced the on sale for trips to space. Of course, we saw that Branson cat pull it off. It's like a 90-minute flight. They go on sale now for the affordable price of $450,000.
Jeez.
But you get your own Under Armour spacesuit out of the deal, so it's a win, right?
It's an obvious win for... I'll tell you what, man. Can you imagine having that kind of money where you can spend $500,000 for a 90-minute flight to space?
Come on. Now, if I could blast someone I hated into space forever, that's worth, half a $1,000,000 right there. But my question is, because we were talking about this is a chance for someone also to die, be the first person to die in space. That hasn't happened. There's been 18 astronauts that have given their life in space exploration, but most of that is returning to Earth because re-entry is a bitch. I guess. Yeah. So no one has actually died. Is there something, a disclaimer, a waiver you could sign that if, in fact, the flight explodes in space, you have no legal ramifications? Is there something that they can actually make you sign for that?
Yeah.
Legally?
So I'm going to go on just you're catching me not off guard. It's just that I don't have all the information in front of me on this. I will tell you this. When this was first being proposed, I know there's kind of the nascent space industry, the commercialization of space travel. New Mexico has been a hub for a lot of this. Yeah. And they were pushing a lot of legislation. And I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure they might have enacted some legislation in New Mexico that shields these companies who are providing, and Virgin Galactic was, on the forefront of trying to make sure they had these protections in place so that the people who are delivering people to space, the companies that are delivering people to space, have some shield of liability. So if something does go wonky, they're not sued. Because this is obviously, when things go wrong in space, it's catastrophic.
Yeah.
I've seen Gravity. I know it doesn't go well.
Right. If space could kill George Clooney, imagine what it could do to a regular person.
Yeah, I know. And he's invincible. He's Batman.
Right. Yeah, I was very fascinated by the subject. I was like, wow, that's going to be some kind of weird ironclad. It's got to be a lengthy process to sign your life away for the rocket shot to space. I got LASIK surgery years and years ago. It was wildly successful, by the way. But yeah, you had to sign so many papers. If you go blind, you're not going to sue this. And it's like, wow.
Well, and listen, here's the thing. There are a lot of protections in place where they say, look, if we're putting you on notice of all of the risks, and then as long as you're aware of these, and then we don't act in any really reckless manner, to amplify the normal risks. I mean, that's the same with going into surgery. I mean, that's why your surgeons, before you go into surgery, they give you a long list of the things that could go wrong, and then you go into it knowing that could happen. Now, it's probably rare, but it could happen. And then they're generally shielded from liability unless there's just gross deviation from the standard of care. And I think the same kind of thing applies with this. I mean, if you've got a space engineer or the captain of the rocket ship who shows up drunk that day and flies you into the Pluto.
We're going to Mars.
And you end up blowing up in Pluto. I mean, I think regardless of what kind of legislation's in place in New Mexico, I mean, you might have a case there because you can't waive away your rights to be piloted by a drunk,
Right. So when we see like airliners that crash and families sue them and win settlements that way, it's usually something negligent. If it was an act of God, something natural, they wouldn't have probably any kind of ramifications or a course of action.
Yeah, unless you could foresee the act of God and then the plane wasn't engineered in the right way to withstand that. But I mean, that's usually what happens, and that's why airline litigation is challenging. But it is one of those things where there is absolutely a recourse for family members and for survivors too of aviation incidents.
All right, cool.
And crashes where there was an issue with the plane and there was pilot error, and so then you've got claims against the people who employ the pilot for failure to properly train and to oversee and make sure that they have other backup measures in place. I mean, there are a number of different avenues for that. But by the way, off topic, but you brought up you want to blast. There are a few people you'd like to blast into space.
Yeah,
I have a very good relationship with my ex-wife now, but my son who's turning 8 is going to go into a Shark Tank in Denver at the aquarium for his 8th birthday, and he wanted to invite his mom and her boyfriend and his son. So the 6 of us, my 2 kids and my ex-wife and her boyfriend and his son, are going to go into a Shark Tank.
What?
In an aquarium in Denver.
So like your kid's 8th birthday wishes to be eaten by a shark?
Well, no, but it's just really kind of funny because I was thinking back, like 6 years ago when I was going through my divorce. I'm like, you know what? Being able to put my wife in a Shark Tank might be really something I'd love to do.
Man, I'm sure there's a similar waiver, like the space waiver, too, for Shark Tank action for the kids.
I'm sure there will be when we.
What do you think? Over under for the waiver pages for the flight to space? More or less than 5 pages you read before you sign your life away to Virgin Galactic. What do you think?
You know what? It may be less than 5. They may not need to say much.
Wow!
You can. This could go horribly wrong.
Sign here. Let me
acknowledge.
I got to tell you something. You could die. Sign right here and tell me you heard that.
On the dotted line.
Wow, that's crazy. All right. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. We're going to track down David here on the phone, and then we'll pick up our conversation with Dave McDivitt and get to some of these answers for the questions. You have something else you want to add to the mix here today? You can do it.
You're listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM. Presented by McDivitt Law Firm.
Interesting, Jeff's question. His wife was injured in a bus accident. It was a rental car bus, I assume, going to or returning from the airport. The bus never hit another vehicle, but it did slam the brakes, sent her flying from the back of the bus into a luggage rack, messed up her back, went to the hospital for internal, actually it says internal kneading. I assume that's bleeding, right?
I'm guessing.
I have internal kneading every time I talk to you, David.
Yeah, well, just keep it internal. Don't keep
internal
it to yourself,
kneading.
all right?
Man, it's pretty serious to have some internal bleeding. The rental car company hasn't paid the hospital bills of $9,000. They said they would when it happened, but they said they're waiting to make sure all the bills are there before they pay up. And now poor Jeff is being beaten up by collections in regards to the hospital bills. So where do they go? Obviously, they need a lawyer, right?
Yeah, I think that lawyer can
serious.
help too.
Especially $9,000 medical bill. That's deep, man.
So you've got a couple of things. Obviously, the people who provided the medical care have sent the bill to collections because there's been no attempt to communicate. I mean, I'm assuming there's been no attempt to really communicate to let them know, hey, payment's going to come. And that's frankly, one area where lawyers can be helpful is to keep the payment provider, the service providers, the medical providers in the loop. There may be other forms of insurance. I don't know if they've got health insurance that they can route that through in the interim. if they have med pay on their car that they may be able to use for something like this. There might be other avenues of getting the bulk of those bills paid so that the providers stop, hammering on Jeff and his wife. Once it gets set to collections, you've got some other rights as well with that. But the big deal is the people who provided the medical care want to get paid.
Right. And they're not getting
a separate issue.
Any kind of love, so that's why they go to collections.
Right.
Now, who would he look for at the rental car bus place? Like, would he try to contact their HR to get something?
No, it wouldn't be HR. It would be their risk. Usually they have either some kind of claims management person there, or obviously the rental bus company most likely has insurance as well. And so that insurer is the one that needs to be looped in on this, and they may have an independent claims adjuster that handles this. They may have internal, but if they're not going to pay, and by the way, generally the statute of limitations in a motor vehicle collision is 3 years in Colorado, but there's an overall 2-year general statute of limitations for most personal injury claims. And this happened, I think, in 2020.
Yeah, November 2020.
Yeah.
So it's more than a year old.
More than a year old. They've got some time, but they don't want to sit on this much longer, because you never know what kind of statute of limitations issues might present themselves.
And there's no such thing as like a mom and pop rental car company, so you're dealing with these big corporations that are very much layered with crap, right?
Most likely. You could have. You might have a mom and pop kind of operation, but they're still supposed to carry insurance.
Right.
If they're doing business, they're an actual business, they're supposed to be carrying insurance, and especially when they're operating vehicles on the road and carrying passengers. That they're subject to a whole set of regulations.
John's on the phone. He has a similar issue, and correct me if I'm wrong on this level here, John. Basically, you had a hospital bill. You were making payments on it. They added another bill. They took money that you were making payments on the other one and moved it to a different bill, and now they sent that other one to collections. Is that kind of the right version?
That is the quick version.
So if he's making payments on one bill, how can they move those funds to another bill?
Well, look, John, this is a complicated question, and let me ask you a couple of follow-up questions.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, John. When you said you were making payments on the bill, how were you making payments? Were these automatic deductions? Were you writing a check? Were you bringing cash in? How were you doing this?
I don't know if he can hear you. How were you making the payments? Was it just checks? Do you have credit card? So he has records of it, right? You have records?
Yep.
Okay,
yeah.
Yes, I do.
And do you have records indicating somehow that the payment was going to a particular account? Because what they do is whenever you have different dates of treatment, or different providers at a hospital, you have a lot of people who provide medical services at the hospital, and sometimes they all bill independently. And so are we talking about one bill from, let's call it General Hospital, and General Hospital sent you a bill, and then a month later General Hospital sent you a different bill for a different date of service? Can you walk me through the bills?
Yeah, do you have proof that you were paying for one of those specific bills there?
Yes, I was paying a $25,000 one with another bill at the start of it. So I was paying two at one time since August. And then December rolls around. The big one, the $25,001 disappeared, and then another generated number one popped up around $900, and I noticed that all my things were put onto that account, and so I assumed they gave me a break. But then I found out it wasn't the case.
They took that part to the collections of $25,000. Man, that's a lot of money, too.
Jesus. So
right, that's an indictment of our healthcare system, by the way. There should be a man or woman in this country that's paid $25,000. You weren't getting calf implants, were you there, John?
No, just appendicitis.
You had appendicitis and a $25,000 bill. That's obscene.
John, let me ask you, do you have health insurance at all?
Did you have insurance, or were you paying this out of pocket?
Actually, I thought I had a health insurance, but it turned out to be a medical sharing program. And so they only paid $1,000 on the whole deal.
Oh my gosh. All right. Have you spoken to anybody in the accounting department at the hospital?
Have you asked them any questions in regards to that? Have you talked to anyone in the billing department there?
I have. They just said they didn't think that I was paying enough, and so they sent it to collections.
Wow. Yeah, man, this is this a place that someone might file for bankruptcy here, Dave?
Well, listen, I'm the wrong guy to ask for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and here's why. There's still enough things at play here. I shouldn't say I'm the wrong guy to ask. That may be premature. That may be the wrong question to ask, I guess. I think it is worth, though, speaking to an attorney who works in the collection field. And honestly, the lawyers who do that are typically bankruptcy lawyers as well.
Uh-huh.
You'll often see that they have practice areas that dabble in both.
And sometimes those lawyers get you a break. They say, all right, well, I'll tell you what, you pay us $5,000 and we're good.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that might be where you want to go, John. That's just tough.
It just seems extreme for them to send it to collections when you are making good faith payments, right, and you're knocking that bill down. Now, here's what they might do. They might say, outstanding balances over 180 days will automatically be sent to collections. And so maybe in those 6 months, you didn't pay your general hospital the full $25,000, but you were making really, significant headway, for example, right, toward that. So there may be, you've got some options before you just throw up your hands and declare bankruptcy. But it is important because these medical bills will follow you too.
Right.
So it's not that you can just get out from underneath them necessarily. And so that's the thing. And even bankruptcy, there are certain rules with bankruptcy law that may make it difficult to get out from underneath, some of this medical debt.
Yeah.
So,
man, well, good luck there, John. That's terrible. And again, shame on the whole healthcare system for something like that to even happen. Appendicitis, like I said, if he was getting calf implants or whatever, the new pectoral muscles or something like that, right? Okay, then you have a bill.
Hey, let me tell you something, Ross. You need to be a little bit more sensitive to those of us who have dabbled with the idea of calf implants. Every day I look at my legs thinking, I need some
He's
calves.
currently flipping through a brochure on calf implants.
Yeah, right now.
He's our lawyer. He's
Yes.
Dave McDivitt hanging out with us. It's we still got time. We still got people to help.
You're listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM. Presented by McDivitt Law Firm.
I think it's an easy question. Delia sent this one in. Are mandates law? Now, she didn't specify, but I assume like mask mandates. Is that law? Where's the mandate fall in?
Yeah,
this whole legal thing?
I'm guessing that's basically what she means. Mandates, I'm also going to infer that when she means mandates, she's talking about really what are essentially executive orders from the president of the United States or the governor of a particular state. And what they do, these executive orders, which I think we talk about things like mandates or, the mayor of a city, for example, typically, certainly at the state level and absolutely at the federal level, these executive branches, the leader of the executive branch, so the president or the governor, typically has the right to issue an executive order, which is their way of controlling something that's underneath the umbrella of their department. So something that's done by the executive branch. And they have the full force and effect of law. So assuming that it is constitutional, and that's really the only way to challenge these things, or for it to be rescinded by somebody sitting in that same seat. So the particular, let's call it the governor, could issue a mandate, an executive order, and they can then later issue another executive order basically canceling out that first one, or the next governor could come in and issue an order canceling out that prior order from the earlier governor. Or there can be a constitutional challenge to it. But the legislature, so the state legislature, doesn't have the power to just overrule that mandate. Now, they have the legislature would have the power to maybe enact a law that would make it difficult, if not impossible, for that executive order to take place, and often, removing funding for a particular entity that might be enforcing the order would be one way of doing that. But they are typically, as long as they're constitutional, they are legal.
Oh, okay. So for instance, when they first announced the mandatory vaccination for companies that had 100 or more employees, that was law until the courts said it was not constitutional. Then it became non-law. Is that kind of how it works?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Makes sense. That actually makes sense. That's the first thing I think we've talked about, legally speaking, that makes sense.
Except I'm legally in love with you, Ross.
Oh, okay.
Happy Valentine's week.
Hey, yeah, happy Valentine's to you, too. Will you be mine?
Remember, my daughter, beat you to it, man.
Tell her she's in big trouble.
Yeah,
How old is she? 7? How big a girl?
My son's 7. She's 10, and she's not she's tall and thin, and you could take her.
Okay.
She's in a fight, you would win.
Okay. Well, tell her she's in trouble then. Okay. Tell her back off. Let's
back off.
Citizen James with a very interesting question. I'm going to give you the kind of the version, and I'm going to have to relay. I don't know. Dave's
it wasn't working
remote today. I don't think they can hear you for some reason.
Their loss. My voice is like an angel's voice.
Like an angel screaming out flowers. It's crazy. So here's the deal. James lives on a street that has a big dip in it, and people are often hitting that too fast and losing control, hitting cars and stuff. And what do you know? Recently, someone hauling ass, he said that he saw the ring cam. One of his neighbors has it on camera. This person's going so fast when they hit this dip, sparks explode because they belly out.
Yep.
And it fires up onto his property. It's a rental property. Hits his, his Crown Vic, his 2005 Crown Vic. Destroys that. Turns out the driver of the car didn't have insurance. It wasn't even their car. The car was also in a previous accident. And since he only had liability, he's getting no help to get his 05 Crown Vic back together. What does he do? Am I missing? Oh, wait, let me jump over here. Am I missing anything, James, or was that pretty much all the grisly details?
That's the grisly details. I mean, in a nutshell, obviously having liability, I didn't have uninsured motorists on the car, unfortunately, because it was long paid for. But where it was parked, obviously, it was way out of the roadway and never expected that to happen.
Right. Yeah, you expect if it's parked by your house, it's going to be fine, just fine. And James says the only advice he's getting is talk to the DA and then ... Yeah, and good luck with that.
Yeah, no, and look, James, that's true. I mean, just because the guy doesn't have insurance or the car isn't insured, and by the way, really truly verify that, do some digging, but you can still sue the guy and get a judgment against him. And you can garnish. Then you work to garnish his wages if he's employed. I mean, you can get some money.
Do you have all the contact information for the person who was driving the car?
Yeah, they just went to court, and I never heard nothing back from anybody on that. So I have no idea as far as that front goes. I'm dealing with other stuff, and at the moment that's more pressing as far as trying to move. A whole other issue came out of this with the rental house I'm in. We kind of butted heads with the property owner there, so I'm unfortunately having to get out of that whole situation.
Man, so this one person driving like an ass basically just screwed up James's life pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Yeah.
So where did he go?
Well, so 2 things. I mean, I guess 3 things. So number 1 would be, obviously, with the advice you're getting about talking to the DA is because there's a way of asking the court for restitution, which that means the court in the criminal matter, the traffic matter, would issue an order requiring that this guy who did this to pay you the money.
So part of the court case, you're going to lose X amount of points. We're going to fine you this, and you're going to have to pay
$5,000 of damage, or whatever it is, $10,000. But and then you're going to run into the same issue there, though, which is collecting on that. I mean, so what typically they do is they have to pay that money to the registry of the court, and then you're able to get that money. I mean, that's oftentimes one way that they do it, but the other way to do it would be to sue him civilly as well, sue him directly, and then get a judgment that you could enforce. And sometimes those are, frankly, a little bit easier because you're doing it yourself, or you can hire a lawyer to help you to theoretically collect on. I mean, garnishing wages, for example, things like that. You have to wait for DA to really push the issue, but it's again, like squeezing blood out of a turnip. I mean, sometimes there's no money there.
And that's why I think, James, we talked off the air, that's his biggest problem. He can't really get anyone excited about this because there's so little fruit on this vine.
Yeah, and it's tricky. And, you brought up the dip. I mean, it sounds like it's not a safe road condition. And so, you can ask the city. Theoretically, I could sue the city for that, but that's a really tough hill to climb on something like that unless it's a known danger, and you get into engineering issues of whether or not there's a purpose for that, or whether it was engineered or constructed improperly. I mean, so suing the city is really tricky, but can be successful under certain circumstances. I'm not saying it would be under this one, but
So maybe you do that and see what happens. For something.
Well, you got to be careful. But that's a minefield too. Because there's so many regulations. So you definitely need a lawyer if you're going to do that. I don't know, frankly, honestly, James, I don't know a lot of lawyers who would take that case on a contingency fee, because you're talking about the property damage to a paid-off Crown Vic. It's probably the value is, while it's significant to you.
He says 3,800 was the blue book or whatever on it. But again, he said he's like, this car I met my girl in and we got married and all that.
I know.
I'm the same way I fall in love with my vehicles.
Yeah.
So no easy answer, James. Unfortunately, man. You're
in a tough position on that one, and I know you've got other priorities, things to deal with, and I wish you all the luck with this.
Yeah, good luck, James. Sorry, I was going to give you a smoking gun answer here.
Well, I got two really quick questions.
Okay.
The first one is the car that the girl was driving had already been totaled. Like I said, the airbags have been deployed. She admitted to that at the scene. Can I go after the owner of the car as well? And my second question is, all of my neighbors on that block have reported this dip, and the city has done nothing. They've had people come out and look at it. I've actually had to pull people out of cars that have rolled into my neighbor's yard.
Wow. Jeez. Well, so two very good points, and this goes to what I was saying earlier, making sure that there is an insurance. But yes, I mean, the owner of the car may have insurance as well on a different vehicle that might also kick in on something like this too. Now, when you said that airbags had already deployed,
and she'd already wrecked the car, or the car had been previously wrecked before they wrecked it in his car, so she's driving around with airbags deployed already. My God.
No, that's and again, even if there's no insurance, you can go after the owner of the car for what is called maybe negligent entrustment, for being negligent in giving the keys to this car to a person who's already demonstrated that they should not be driving a car. And then the second issue with the city goes to that second point, or that third point that I had, which is pursuing a claim against the city, and that does help. I mean, there's a body of evidence that there's just been reported a lot. This is not they have been on notice that this is a dangerous condition, and that they're not doing anything about it. I mean,
is there a time frame on this?
Well, there can be. I mean, usually for making a claim against a governmental entity, it's 180 days from the collision or whatever the issue was. So if you're still within that 6-month window, you can. But there is a statutory formula in Colorado for what you have to do to put the city on notice, who you have to put on notice. I mean, the city attorney, for example, assuming that this is a Colorado Springs city street. And that's where a lawyer who could help you would be very beneficial. But you may have to pay one out of pocket for a little while on this one, just because you're talking about the damage on. We're talking $3,800 damage. I mean, that's a small claims case, as it is. But you've got the societal issue here for the whole neighborhood and for the people who are driving on the street, that it's not safe. So I think if what you're trying to do is get this condition changed, there are other ways of exerting some influence on the city too, which is making sure that these complaints are formal. Call your news station too, and see if they are willing to do a report on this too. I mean, drumming up public support and awareness about the dangers of this street can sometimes make a change happen.
James, you said you have one of the neighbors has ring cam footage of the accident, right, where the sparks are flying and everything?
Yeah, I thought about turning that into
that's a news
or something.
That's a news boner. That's what they call that in the news world. It's a news boner. They would love that footage.
They do.
That would start things very well, man. Anyone they'll lead in the news, say, tonight at 10, a car careens down a Springs Road, nearly killing a resident. Boom. It's news gold.
This may not be suitable for younger audiences.
Yeah, something like that. Oh, man. You would own it, James. So that's a good start right there. And then see what unfolds there, because it's going to be a lot of work for your $3,800. And the thing is it worth it for you, right? It's kind of the end answer.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. James, good luck. Thanks for the story, though. That was awesome.
You're listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM. Presented by McDivitt Law Firm.
Needs to let it go.
Let it go.
Aaron, are you singing Frozen?
I am singing Frozen.
Ooh, you're lucky you're not in here, Law Frog. We'd have a lawsuit on our hands.
You have a no Frozen policy.
Aaron says, my almost 9-year-old son wants to be adopted by his stepdad, but my ex-husband refuses. My son doesn't talk to his father, doesn't have any relationship with him. My ex emailed me at one point telling me I gave him a title to a vehicle that he wanted. He would allow the adoption. I never responded to them. Is there any way around this issue for my son to be adopted? Do they actually need the old guy's blessing here? Why is he even part of this?
Yeah. Look, here's why. The Colorado's not unique in this. Courts are loath to strip parental rights away from the biological parents.
What do you mean? Are loath? I don't understand. What does that mean?
They don't like to do it.
Okay.
They want to do it at all costs. They want to avoid just unilaterally and involuntarily taking a child from a parent.
Like it's the old my name's Paul, this is between y'all kind of mentality?
Yeah, a little bit. Now, obviously, they want to make sure that the child is safe, but there's a difference between making sure that the child is safe and that the parents the courts are intervening and saying, you know what, you're just not fit. You're not their dad anymore. You're just not, period. Sorry, go home. They will do it. There are conditions where they will do it. I mean, it's done all the time. But truly significant circumstances oftentimes need to be at play here. And so the easiest way to do it is to get a parent to voluntarily terminate their rights, because you cannot adopt a child that belongs to or has another dad, or another mom. And by the way, it's not just dads. I mean, the moms sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the fact that she has an email saying, "Oh, trade you the kid for a car."
Yeah. Well,
come on, that proves he's not a nice guy.
He's a jerk. Yeah, obviously, and my heart aches for this little 9-year-old. I mean, this is just this is heartbreaking.
And nothing a 9-year-old kid should be dealing with. Just like that guy earlier having to pay $25,000 medical bill for appendicitis.
Yeah,
it shouldn't happen. And also, 9-year-old kids should be in this quagmire fighting between two dads.
So listen, this is one where the laws on this are very specific. It's a very sensitive issue, and you've got to get my recommendation is that this mother get spend time finding the right family attorney who specializes in adoption law. And these
I'm
adoption
sure there's
law
someone
attorneys,
out there who's very tenacious.
There are. Yeah, and there are in town. There's some really good ones in town, because this adoption issues are this is not uncommon. I mean, I'm telling you, this is not uncommon. The mom and the child want the stepdad to adopt, and stepdad can't because biological father is just a jerk and isn't present. And so you have to establish a bunch of conditions, or a bunch of conditions have to be met. You have to establish that meet those conditions in order to be able to go to the court and say, hey, we're going to go ahead and terminate it. And then once the rights have been terminated, then there's a separate issue for the adoption. But
the biggest hurdle, though, is getting over the father holding on for.
Yep. Yeah. And listen, I don't know about this email saying you trade the title to the car. I mean, you can, if you want to start that conversation. I mean, I'm not advising that necessarily. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of issues here. But I mean, you've got to be careful that you don't give the title to the car without the commensurate consent for the termination of parental rights. Because
would you trust that guy to say, okay, here's the car. Okay, well, I'm not going to sign after all.
Exactly. But I'll tell you what. I mean, if that may be the cheapest. I mean, if you got this guy who's such a deadbeat that he would do that, maybe that's the. Gosh, I mean, he ain't even saying it like that. Maybe that's the way to approach it.
I'm going to say, you give him the car, but before that, you cut the brake lines.
Oh gosh.
Huh?
Okay, Ross, you said that. You said that.
This thing doesn't stop like it used to. I don't know why the guy sounds like Beetlejuice, but I just imagine like Beetlejuice kind of jerky. Okay, and then there's one more note too. Let's say your ex is not up to date on alimony and stuff like that, or whatever they call it. You had to give money for
child
the kids,
support or spousal support.
Yeah. So what if they're behind on that? Does that give them more of an advantage of making that guy not the kid's father anymore, or does that even part of it at all?
That's a good question, and I don't know how the courts weigh that. I don't know how much of an influence that has. I mean, I don't think that alone can necessarily can do that, because there are plenty of dads out there, or mothers. I mean, it depends on the situation, but we usually talk about deadbeat dads where they just aren't paying anything for child support. But again, that's where I'm just going to be so careful in how you approach this and how I even answer this, because I think that just getting somebody who truly specializes in these adoption issues and dependency and neglect issues.
Right. I'm sure there's a lawyer out there that has had this happen to their lives, and they're extra tenacious when it comes to getting that kid out of the...
Thank you for listening to the Law Frog Radio Show with David McDivitt and Ross Ford on Kilo 94.3 FM, presented by McDivitt Law Firm.